Johann Hoch embarks on one more cross-country road trip with a couple of marriages before the one that will end his career. This is Tomb Snoopers. All right, welcome once again to Tomb Snoopers. Patty, still as good as you were 5 minutes ago. No, we sometimes record these in batches, so we're still dealing with the same stuff as last week, but nothing new to report, I don't think.
I mean...
in the last half hour.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting few days to come.
Yeah.
Every single day is like a month.
Right, it really does feel like it.
I mean, so a week between the last podcast and this one, who knows?
Yeah, and okay, so we got to get a few more done in the next few weeks because I'm going to be going to Wales, England, and Scotland.
Yeah, I'm super jealous.
For a bit,
Take me with you.
Come on.
I know. I've been watching the airline prices and I just can't do it.
It's a little rough right now.
Yeah.
And I got a New York trip after this too. I really wanted to, I got tickets to see Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves doing Waiting for Godot.
What?
It's just such a Gen X kind of thing, you know. This is Bill and Ted.
Chicago Connection, Michael Patrick Thornton is also in that production.
Yeah, really?
Yes, he's the gentleman in the wheelchair. So
okay.
I just let you know you'll be singing Chicago. Are you singing it?
Yeah, I'm gonna be. I got tickets. I got to go next month to see it, and then maybe I'm trying to make a whole trip out of it.
What are the dates?
I'm seeing it. I think the 8th or the 9th, and the next day the bassist Ron Carter is going to be playing. So, you know, there's, like, as weird as the world is, life also goes on, and we still have bread and circuses, I guess. But, yeah, like, this weekend, I'm going to see a high school production of Hadestown tonight.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great.
That's good. I've seen that on Broadway a couple of times. It's a great show.
Nice.
And then tomorrow I got Cemetery Tours, and we might go to the Broadway Sing-Along Bar again, which is super fun.
Okay.
And Sunday we're seeing Herbie Hancock, the jazz.
Oh my God.
So it's quite a weekend, you know. Yes. It is a jam-packed kind of weekend. And later next weekend we're seeing David Byrne from the Talking Heads, which is supposed to be a great show.
All right,
so,
I'm just going to the Pumpkin Festival at the Botanic Gardens tonight.
Yeah, and soon we got to make another trip out to Broadstop,
yes,
which is where we go after door knocking
in Kenosha.
Yep.
With see our server Katie, who's fantastic.
Yeah.
So yes.
All right, so. Well, welcome along, everybody. We're still continuing with this deep dive into the story of Johann Hoch, who is the subject of my new book, Chicago's Serial Husband. It's been out for, by the time this episode comes out, a little over a month. Last weekend, I got to give a copy to Tom Skilling, which was very exciting.
That's wild.
If you're from Chicago, he's Chicago's weatherman emeritus. He's retired now, but he was the weatherman on WGN for years. And I remember, like, my brother first saw him when he came to visit. Was like, they put this guy on television? And like, we're the city that put Siskel and Ebert on television, you know? I mean, he's not generally what you would have called a telegenic person. He's not, well, my brother was in L.A. This wasn't the kind of guy you'd think of as an L.A. weatherman. He was a Chicago weatherman.
And that's an interesting point. He is a weather savant.
Yes, really knows. It's like listening to Leonard Bernstein talk about music. Even when it's way over your head, you know that he knows what he's talking about, and he's so enthusiastic about it.
He is. And there was a point, Adam, where because he would have these weather series. Like, he would do these sort of like in-depth deep dives. And, like, my husband always tells me, like, the death out of the darkness, like storms coming off the lake and things like that. And he also did a series where he did, like, basically a storm from the 1700s that still impacts our weather today.
Whoa.
So, really wild. And he also really broke down, like, the polar vortex, like, how we broke the North Pole, essentially. Yeah, this guy, he's so much about the climate and making sure that the Weather Service is still funded. Obviously, we're not.
Yeah, he had some things to say about what's happening to science in this country.
He's great, yeah. So,
and what's happening in the city, too. He lives in Hawaii now, now that he's retired. But he was back in town for a PBS thing that I did with him and Corey and Marianne, who did Vintage Tribune, and Jeff Bayer hosted, and it was a lot of fun.
That's lovely. And when did you see this? Was it live?
This was a live show, but it was all based on the Chicago Mysteries show that we did for PBS a while ago.
Okay.
So that I'm sure you can find online.
Oh, wonderful.
And one of the talking heads. Well, I wish it was just a talking head because it's usually a medium shot, and it's like if you asked the computer to show you a person who doesn't know what to do with his hands. That would be me. I'm like kind of this weird lockstep position. But all right, so here we are on a podcast where you can't see my hands or what I'm doing with them. And
same, my double chin as well.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about any of that stuff here. This is not one of those podcasts where we film it. I tried that once, just thought we could get some material, but nah. So anyway, you just came in for the data here. You want the data about. So we got 2 more victims of Johann Hoch before he comes back to Chicago and starts to kill again.
Jeez.
So having left Anna Hendricks, the first thing he did apparently was he went to see a woman named Johanna Reichel, who lived on like Milwaukee Avenue up in like what would be later known as Polish Broadway here in Chicago. Wicker Park, essentially. He went to see her, tried to get her to marry him, then left off for San Francisco. It seemed like every time he left town, he went to see Johanna Reichel and asked her to marry him. She was like 10 years older than he was, which, that wasn't unusual, but later on he would say, why, she's old enough to be my mother.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, it's like, and the reporter said, wow, I wonder what she's going to say when she sees that.
No kidding.
So, but then he went out to San Francisco, and as far as I can tell, did not marry anybody in San Francisco. He had a few relatively quiet months out there. But after a while, he made his way out to Baltimore. And in Baltimore, he met a woman. He was, told people that he was just going to be stopping by for a little bit, and stopped into a boarding house. I think got a job with a guy named Henry Plumhoff, who was a plumber, which... That's just such a nice name for a plumber, Mr. Plumhoff the plumber.
It really is.
And then ended up in a boarding house run by Nanny Von Klenk. And Nanny Von Klenk was a boarding house owner. Was somebody he seemed to have liked marrying women who were running boarding houses. And she would later say she was actually engaged to somebody else, but he seemed to hypnotize me, and then I was his.
Oh, God.
And I think when these stories about him were coming out, and there were stories that he might have been a hypnotist, I think that was something that a lot of women told themselves. So I think all of them, who had survived, would always say, I narrowly avoided being killed myself. I'm so fortunate. But they also, I think, felt embarrassed that they had fallen for this.
Oh, no
and by saying, oh, he was a hypnotist.
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, yeah, well, it can't have been helped. It was supernatural powers. What am I against that? I think it just was comforting to them to think that he must have been hypnotizing them.
Yeah, no one wants to believe they fall for that kind of
right.
stuff.
Yeah. So shortly after they got married then, well, for one thing, she didn't have a whole lot of money, as it turned out, and wasn't that willing to give it over to him, what she did have. And she said about a month after the wedding, I'll read her actual quote, I received an anonymous letter from a woman who claimed she was Schultz's wife and that she had a child by him. The woman made threats against my husband and said that I ought to leave him. Oh. About the same time, my husband received 2 letters in a threatening strain signed Henrietta Brooks, and I easily recognized the handwriting as the same as the letter I had received. I reproached my husband for his wrongdoing, and he told me that I must not pay any attention to such letters. This convinced me that I had made a mistake and that my husband was not the proper person for me to live with, so I left him. Sometime later, he came to me and tried to induce me to lend him some money I had in the bank, saying that a relative of his had died in Germany and left him a fortune, and that he wanted to go over there to get it. But I refused and told him that I didn't want anything to do with him. He left me and said he was going to Philadelphia. This is a rare case where he was telling the truth. He was going to Philadelphia. So this reminds me a lot of the thing with Minnie Podolsky, where she had received letters saying, stay away from this guy. That nobody could ever find this Henrietta Brooks person. I looked and looked for somebody by that name in the same vicinity. Reporters at the time looked and looked for somebody in that vicinity. They kept assuming that there really was some missing Johann Hoch wife named Henrietta Brooks. Or in this case, he was going by John Schultz. Okay. Back to using that name. But most likely this was Hoch himself writing her letters about what a bad guy this was, and writing himself letters threatening himself, but signing it Henrietta Brooks. So this was probably the same thing he was doing with Minnie Podolsky. Now, Nanny Von Klenk survived. She wasn't poisoned or anything. But I did find one wild thing in the process of trying to figure out what became of everybody is that her son, who probably would have known Hoch, probably would have lived with him, he would have been a kid at the time, later became known as Baltimore Johnny.
Oh, okay.
He became a big bootlegger in Philadelphia in the 1920s. But while he was on the run for having stolen like 150 crates of whiskey, he got into a fight in Philadelphia over a woman and was shot to death.
That'll happen.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens when you get involved with bootleggers. I always tell people bootleggers did not really have a long life expectancy. You got to buy really fancy underpants for yourself while you were here. Like Capone bought like Union suits at Marshall Field, according to what came out in his trial, that must have cost a fortune. Really nice underpants. You have to like make a decision about, do you want to save your butt or keep your butt comfortable?
Oh my God.
Because gangsters basically could not do both.
So this one, but Baltimore Johnny?
Yeah, Baltimore Johnny was the one time taken down. It was another guy, but it was because of a dame.
I'm saying, yeah.
Because of a dame. Apparently he was on the run from the law at the time. He'd been out gambling and partying all night, as you do.
Sure.
Got into a fight with somebody who was sitting in a car, and the guy in the car like shot him through the window. And it took him a while to figure out that there was Baltimore Johnny, alias Johnny Kaler, alias Johnny Clink, which of course comes from Von Clink.
Oh boy.
So yeah, though poor Nanny had to go through it for a bit here. And they had been married at Towson. There was a thing saying that they were. There was a thing saying that they were planning on a wedding tour in Germany. They were just married at like a union hall. She was living on 418 and a half North High Street. But he just went out of town. But having told her he was going to Philadelphia, that's exactly what he did. He went to Philadelphia and married another woman by the name of Carolyn Stryker. She was very loquacious. She wasn't interviewed as much as I wish she had been, because she had all kinds of stories. But she may have actually been poisoned herself. So Mrs. Carolyn Stryker, sometimes it's Stryken, sometimes it's Syken, sometimes it's Carolyn Stike, sometimes it's just Carol, sometimes it's Carolina, as these things always go. So this would have been the fall of 1904. She later said that she had miraculously survived this modern Bluebeard. She would later seen at her home and had recognized the picture of this guy who had deserted her. By that time, there was a massive manhunt underway for Johann Hoch, and she said, I know that was him. She said, there is no doubt in my mind that the man I married under the name of John Schmidt is Johann Hoch. Not only I, but all of my relatives and friends who saw the pictures recognized him, and it is only a miracle that has prevented me from sharing the fate of the other unfortunate women whom he persuaded to become his wives.
Oh,
it was in the latter part of August that Schmidt, or Hoch, inserted an advertisement in the Deutsches Gazette stating that he was a German mechanic and desired to obtain board in a quiet German family. I answered the advertisement, and he came here to live, his trunk marked with the initials J.S., and a number of Chicago labels arrived 3 days later. All of his clothes appeared to be new and bore the names of Chicago firms. He was a well-educated man, always pleasant and attentive, and all who met him learned to like him. Before we were married, he told me that he was a widower and had 4 children, all of whom were dead. Again.
Okay.
One day he suggested that we go to Ardmore, where his late wife was buried, and he would show me the grave. It was an unmarked stone, and after pointing it out to me, he laid some flowers upon it. One afternoon he came home and showed me a letter which he said had been sent to him from Germany, but it was addressed to the general delivery in this city, and my daughter has since told me that it was mailed in Philadelphia, and he doubtless wrote it himself. It was written on black-bordered paper and stated that his father had just died, leaving him $5,000. He then suggested that we should be married and go to Germany together to claim the money. The ceremony took place here on October 20th and was performed by Reverend Dr. Albright of the German Lutheran Church. During all this time, Hoch had been employed in the tinsmith shop of a man named Decker at 27th and Girard, but the day after our wedding he brought home his tools and said he was going to send them to be repaired. He shipped them somewhere, but I do not know where. Each day after that he returned at dinner time as usual, with his face smeared and dirty as though he had been at work, but we have since learned that he had given up his position there, and how he spent the day I do not know. And it was later said that he tried to institute a strike, so they fired him or something.
Oh, boy.
Only a short time after our marriage, he told me he was an excellent cook and insisted on preparing several meals. He said that he had cooked a great deal in Chicago when his wife was ill and wanted to show me what he could do. Then he told me that he believed the drinking of beer occasionally would benefit me, and, refusing to allow me to order any, went for it himself. Oh. After eating the food and drinking the beer, I felt strange and was ill several times during the week. Then he made me a present of a ring. I had only worn it a few days when my finger began to swell and became very sore. It was with great difficulty that I was able to get it off, and I firmly believed that it contained a poison of some kind, that he intended to take my life in that way. I did not suspect him of anything wrong at the time, and when the horrible stories concerning him came out, I looked back, and it occurred to me that my illness had always occurred after my eating or drinking something he had given me. No one would have suspected that he was a man of that sort, for he did not drink nor smoke, and told me he never gambled. Once when I pressed him to take some of the coffee he had poured out for me and which I had drunk, he said that the grounds on the bottom of it were not good for him and he would not take it. We planned to sail for Germany October 30th, and I went with him to the office of the steamship company, where he paid a deposit of $5 to reserve the passage tickets. The next day he borrowed $200 of me to go down and purchase them, saying that we would have plenty more when he came into his inheritance. He also told my daughter that she would be provided for when he secured the money. As usual, the next day he went away in the morning, saying he would get the tickets during the day. From that time, we have never heard from him. Most of his belongings he had managed in some way to take with him, but the trunk and a few personal articles are still here and can be used to identify him if he is captured. I can hardly realize the awful danger to which I was exposed, and am greatly upset as a result of it all. After being so deceived, I shall never marry again.
Oh, no!
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it is a very dramatic experience that you went through. Have we ever had a situation that you've seen where a ring might be poisoned?
You know, that was something that would, after she told this story, newspapers were publishing all these diagrams of it and saying there was some kind of historical precedent back in Italy someplace. They speculated as to what kind of poison it was and said that this must be what he was doing. He was giving them rings that had tiny little needles.
What?
That would have been just enough to cut you and insert a poison that was hidden inside of the ring.
Or they were allergic to cheap jewelry.
More likely they were just allergic to cheap jewelry. This was something that was speculated on and then republished as fact over and over, but more likely. The thing about Carolyn Stryker is she would later say that she had psychic visions at the moment that he was executed and stuff.
Yes.
So,
sweetie, you needed to wear gold, not gold-plated. That lead was getting to you.
That's almost certainly what was really going on here. So, but then, he just left her in Philadelphia, and at that point he would be going back to Chicago. Now, she would eventually be considered his last legal wife. She was the only one that really came up in the trial later on. She didn't show up herself. She just sent witnesses to establish that he had married this woman in the fall of 1904, right before he came back to Chicago and resumed using the name Johann Hoch.
Right.
So he was John Jacob Schmidt to her, one that was his real name that he would go back and forth to now and then. He hadn't used, that we know of, Johann Hoch in years at that point. It was what he used when he first came to Chicago, stealing it from his first American wife's late husband. But for one reason or another, he decided to use that name again. And I don't know, maybe he was just feeling nostalgic or something. Maybe he thought it was lucky because he'd gotten away with things on it before.
I mean, at that point.
Yeah. So this brings us right to where, I thought initially I was thinking this would be about a 10-episode series. Now we've just finished episode 10.
Uh-oh.
And we're just getting to where he commits the murder that will make him a sensation. And the story really starts to take off. So it's been fun to dig into all of this, though. There's only... This looks like it's going to be one of our shorter episodes, but that's all right. We're still coming up to right about the 20-minute mark here, which is what I tend to shoot for. And the last one was a little bit longer, so it all averages out, folks.
Exactly. And so I'm happy to be along for the ride.
Yeah. So this has been Tomb Snoopers. We're going to be back very shortly here. We're going to really get into the story that established the legend of Johann Hoch, the Chicago's serial marriage man.
Oh, man.
All right, so Patty, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And so thanks for listening to the Tomb Snoopers, everybody. I'm Adam. This is Patty. We will be back next week. As always, there's lots more data, including all the stuff we've talked about today, over at patreon.com/tombsnoopers, plus early access and a whole lot more.